Welcome to the Mindfully Masculine podcast. This is Charles. All right, in this episode, Dan and I will continue discussing The Man's Guide to Women by Dr. John Gottman and others. And our discussion will include the parallels, positive and negative, between dates and job interviews, speaking style and tone, conversation tips, body language and eye contact, touch and physical presence, planning a first date, general dating etiquette, common pitfalls to avoid, and preparation and mindset. Please check out our website, mindfullymasculine.com, where you can find both our audio and video episodes and any news that we find fit to share. Thanks and enjoy.
Good morning, Charles. How are you?
Hello, Dan. I am well, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good. All right, I think we'll do another separate episode with some updates and some happenings, but for this one, we will just jump into our material, which is The Man's Guide to Women, Chapter 4, First Impressions. And this one's more than just first impressions. It really does hit the high points of what to do and what not to do on a date, and first date in particular. And again, as we talked about in our previous episode, this book is amazing because it's got this cheat sheet at the end of every chapter that guys who are doing a podcast can essentially lift right out of the book and use as an episode outline. So
thank you, Gottman.
Much appreciation to the Gottmans for formatting their book that way and making it that easy for us to do just that. Okay, one thing I thought of while I was preparing this morning is the parallels that exist between dates and job interviews. The ones that should exist and the ones that should not exist.
Okay.
One thing that you'll hear many people in the giving advice business say about dates is when it comes to the conversation, you should not treat it like a job interview as far as where are you from? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What do your parents do for a living? What do you do for a living? Where you're just throwing out questions, eliciting information from the person. You don't want to do that because that gets boring and that doesn't feel like a conversation, doesn't feel like you're getting to know somebody. But the way that it does, that a good date does parallel a good interview is that you don't go into it with an attitude of, what do I need to say? What do I need to do? Who do I need to pretend to be to get what I want out of this person?
Yeah.
If you go into an interview like that where it's, okay, I'm ready to become whatever I think I need to become so that they offer me a job, you're usually going to, best case, if you're going to crash at the interview and it's going to be terrible. Worst case, you get the job that you shouldn't be in. And then you spend some time where you and the organization are both figuring out this never should have happened. This relationship should not exist.
Yeah, and that's your fault for showing up and being a different person.
Exactly.
And that's a great insight there because that's why so many people are unhappy with their jobs and probably resentful.
Yes.
Because they're feeling desperate and I just want to get this job. I need the money. So I'm going to be whatever I need to be to
get the employment offer.
Get the job and figure it out later and not realize their happiness is being jeopardized too by being something that you're not. And the irony too is a lot of times it might be something we aspire to be, right? Or that we'd love to be,
right?
But we're not there yet. And we haven't done all of those things and we're not behaving in all of those ways. And now the expectation in the bar is that you're at that level. And that can, I think, cause quite a bit of discomfort because it's just like people are going to be expecting you to be that way and you haven't actually practiced it yet.
Yeah, that could be a negative life-altering experience of getting your dream job before you're ready for your dream job. Similarly, getting the romantic partner of your dreams before you're ready for that partner can also really set you back in life. That can be very difficult.
I know until we recently started talking and thinking about these things, I never thought about it like that when I was going for interviews and jobs or even on dates. Like that insight to me, hopefully that helps other people who are interviewing for jobs and going on dates because just that awareness gives me enough value in my mind to go, okay, look, that's important enough for me to swallow my pride and just get uncomfortable and be who I am, whether it's in the job interview or on the date, because that's going to allow me to find the right fit, and that's going to give me the best platform to then move forward and excel in the job or in that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads to point number 1 in this cheat sheet at the end of the chapter, which is ask open-ended questions. Again, you're not just doing a survey where you're trying to get as many facts out of your date as quickly as you can. Don't ask open-ended questions like, ew, why? That will probably not help you get the kind of information from a potential partner that you want. Be authentic, but try to speak in your lowest register if your natural voice sounds a bit like Mickey Mouse on helium. Yeah, I would say, generally speaking, that men who speak slowly and lowly feel safer and more confident than people who speak rushed and at a higher register.
You think it matches with our body state, right? So when we're excited or anxious about something, our heart is racing, it's moving faster, right? So I would assume that rhythm is synchronized in terms of the feelings it generates. So
for sure,
if you're speaking very quickly, which I do have a tendency to do, I'm absolutely guilty of
me too.
That can actually cause excitement. It might be in a positive way, but it also could cause some anxiety too.
And the point is, practice speaking to people as much as you can, so that you'll be less anxious about it when it's in a situation that you believe matters. And also just try to consciously speak slower. When we do the podcast, we've noticed the faster that we try to talk, the more likely we are to throw in filler words and uhs and ums, and a quiet pause beats a pause filled up with ums and uhs and you knows, for sure.
Absolutely.
But to do that, you have to remind yourself and think consciously. And that can get very hard to just do on a first date if you haven't figured out a way to practice it in much lower cost, low pressure environment.
Right. Yeah.
And because when you're nervous, upset, ramped up, those kinds of things will come out and bubble up to the surface when you don't want them to.
What's interesting is some of the stats he threw out as it relates to the tone of voice, saying that what presidents or owners of CEOs of companies that have lower registers of their voice make more money for the companies, or run companies that make more money. And I don't know how accurate these studies are. However, I know there have been a lot of studies with other physical factors of their leaders, like
height.
The height absolutely is a big one. And looking back when I was in corporate America, I would see all the high-level managers were pretty tall. You didn't have any short. Now, the owner was very short.
Interesting.
But he's the owner.
Right.
He didn't need to really lead people. He got respect out of the box because he was the...
And there are certain characteristics of men in particular, which is what we're focused on right now, that are generally accepted as more attractive, healthier, stronger. And you will see, like with the CEO thing, it's okay, is it their lower voice that is making them more successful, or is their lower voice a symptom of the higher testosterone?
Correct.
And generally speaking, whether it's hunting and gathering or it's running a company, a high testosterone man is going to have some advantages that a lower testosterone man does not have.
Absolutely.
And so that it's hard to nail down correlation versus causation when it comes to something like that. Which is coming first here? Is the low voice showing something about the person, or is challenging yourself to speak lower? There's a razor's edge there where if it sounds like you're putting on some sort of an affect, it's going to come across as inauthentic.
He does talk about you should be speaking at the lowest tone that's natural for you.
Right.
And he mentions a technique of standing in the shower and putting your fingers on the bridge of your nose and seeing and making different tones and seeing what vibrates the most, what vibrates your nose bone the most. Have you done any of this? He said like actors on stage who sing on stage do this to figure out, or even just speaking, where they can speak the most without straining themselves. So anything that is out of their natural range,
too high or too low, is
could right.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, figuring out what's the lowest way that you can hold a conversation without putting something on is probably a valuable tool.
Yeah.
And obviously I've never tried any of these methods because what comes out naturally is pretty darn near perfect.
Yeah.
So why try to improve on that?
And this is where and also if you remember the other book that we were talking about where your walk, your natural gait it's more important that you walk that it is natural for you, but it also should show a relaxed, confident type of gait. So where I am wondering, the balance is coming in here. So what if somebody a guy does have a pitch like Mickey or Minnie Mouse or Goofy and wants to improve on that, but that's not in their natural range. So do we recommend going to a coach for that? What do you think somebody could do? Or their gait, is that just because that's just what they got into a bad habit of, or a habit that just causes them to walk in a way that is not relaxed, or maybe walking too fast or whatever, but that's how they naturally walk. That's how they naturally speak. So we're asking them to be unnatural to improve this, kind of. So do you work with a coach for that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so
how would you approach it?
It comes down to, there's always this push and pull of be your best versus be yourself. And
right.
I would say focus more on being your best self than just being yourself or just being the best. And I draw a distinction between voice and gait in that the biology and anatomy of your vocal cords, it is what it is. But that said, there's also, I've known people that were victims of childhood abuse. And one of the characteristics of that, one of the lifelong symptoms of that can be that there's some arrested development with your voice where your voice gets locked into a higher pitch based on when the abuse happened to you. And I've seen that in both men and women. When somebody speaks with a very childlike voice, it's usually because something really serious and really bad happened to them. And that development has been stopped at that point. So I would say if you've got a voice that you feel is uncomfortably high and possibly unnaturally high, that's something to share with your therapist, or with, I would say therapist first, otherwise close, trusted friends who you can count on giving you their honest impressions in a compassionate, loving way. I think you can change that. It may be unpacking a lot of really painful stuff to do that, depending on what the cause of it is.
Yeah.
The other thing is to just try to figure out times when your speaking voice is at its lowest and its slowest and its most comfortable, and think about what it is about those environments and situations that lends you to talk slower and lower and more confidently, and then try to recreate that in other situations that might be a little bit more stressful. But I think it's okay to ask the questions of, okay, is there a way I can get better at this? With walking, I think you can definitely practice walking slower. And with the sway of your arms, the sway of your hips, anything like that, I wouldn't really focus too heavily on. I would just focus on walking, being comfortable walking at a slower pace. And you can do that by listening to slow music while you walk. And there's ways, but what you alluded to, there's coaches out there that are probably good at all of these things.
Yeah.
If you just talk to one of them, and most coaches in most fields will give you a consultation, a brief consultation to say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with, or here's what I'd like to improve at. Is this something that you've encountered before? And most coaches, if they're online and they've got a portfolio of work that you can look at, will say, oh yeah, I've helped people with that. Here's some videos or some testimonials by some of them, and you can absolutely improve. This is what the program looks like, and you can decide if that's worthy of your time and your money and your effort.
Nice.
But I would certainly consider it. And even the other parts of this, like being a better conversationalist, is also something you can certainly practice and read books on and get coaching on. Being a good listener and acting as if, from a place of authenticity, you're actually interested in what the other person has to say. If you go into a conversation with the idea of every person I talk to they know something I don't know, and they have something to share with me that can be and probably is interesting. I can learn more about what it means to be a human, what it means to be a person, what it means to be a man or a woman from this other person's experience. Go into it with that idea of, I'm about to learn something new about life that I didn't know before, and get excited about that, and you'll have good conversations with people.
Yeah, I heard a line from Jim Quick the other day. He said, it's not how smart are you, it's how are you smart. And I love that idea. That kind of sums up that philosophy that I also believe in, is that everybody has their own life experiences and is really good at something, right? And for me, that's where I love talking to people and asking them questions and figuring out and learning from them, because if they're talking about something they're passionate about and they have some experience in that I don't, which is a lot of things. But yeah, that kind of lines up with the how are you smart kind of thing. I wouldn't lean into start out a conversation with that, but
no,
just try to feel your way around. What are they talking about naturally? And it's okay, this person must know a lot about X, Y, and Z. And then if that's interesting to me, I'll poke about it.
Yeah, and trying to pivot the conversation in directions where someone is speaking about something they're passionate about, and the other person, it's a subject they're passionate about learning more about. That's perfect. And
that's ideal.
Yeah, and I would say,
and rare. I'll be honest with you. I think sometimes it can be very rare.
I would say, as the man on a date with a woman,
that's different. Yeah,
your job to figure that out and try to get it in that direction.
Yeah, my mind went to going out and being in a social situation with a bunch of strangers, not actually back on the date. But yeah, on the date, absolutely, you should be trying to get to know that person as well as possible, because you're going to be investing, obviously, your time and energy and making yourself vulnerable to that person. Yeah, definitely behooves you to even ask questions and take interest in things that you initially don't think you're interested in.
Interesting. Yeah, I would say, yeah, it is true that you can, again, if you go into the date with a justified feeling of responsibility, I'm the facilitator. I'm the man. I asked this woman out on a date to get to know her better. So it's my responsibility and my privilege to guide things in such a way that I get to find out what it is that makes her tick. What's she excited about? What does she like talking about? And that's where in this chapter, it says, your job is to make the woman the center of the conversation and the center of the date. You should not see it as an opportunity to, and we talked about this in, I think, the most recent episode, showing off, talking about your accomplishments, your successes. That is not how you do it.
And it doesn't serve you either. You already know all of those things about yourself, right? It's just, you might as well sit home by yourself and talk to a wall at that point, right?
It's cheap, man. It's very easy to tell stories about how great of a person you are, where it's harder to just let that come through while you're focusing the conversation on the other person.
And the other thing to think about here is they'll ask you about those things at some point if they're interested in those things. Don't just assume that they want to know all of these details or whatever that is, right? You can share a little bit about on the surface, but then if they're not asking questions to dig in further, then clearly that's not something they care about or are interested in, at least at that time, right? They could be nervous. They could be all these other things going on in their mind, just go on in our minds. They're dealing with a whole bunch of other stuff. They might want to ask you about that down the road, and don't take offense or be upset that they didn't ask you that right then and there initially and start making assumptions that they don't care about these things or they don't care about you because they didn't ask about these things that you're super excited about.
Right.
And I'm speaking from experience. Yeah. Where I've had to talk my other part of my brain off the ledge going, hey, relax. This is just because she didn't ask about this doesn't mean she doesn't care about it at this point, right? Give it some time and space. Be patient.
Yeah. And also be okay with.
Even if she doesn't, right?
Hey,
yeah, correct.
There could be things you're super into that somebody else isn't super into talking about. And not all of your interests have to line up 100% in order for you to have a good time on a date or even possibly have a good relationship with somebody.
Absolutely.
There's going to be things that neither of you are, that you just don't match up on. She's into things you're not, you're into things she's not, and that's okay. You ideally, when you're dating someone or you're with someone, you both have your individual lives and your individual interests that you don't just cast aside because you're in a new relationship with somebody. Okay, look into her eyes and match her gestures in a natural and easy way. So again, this is one of those skills where you don't want to just jump into this on a date. When you're actively listening and conversing with someone, you should practice mirroring their gestures and their body language, again, in situations where it's not high value, high stress. Because if you just try to do that for the first time when you're on a date with some gal you're real excited about, there's a good chance it's going to come across weird.
Yeah, especially if she's like flipping her hair and you decide I'm going to try and flip mine, right?
Yeah, you and I don't have hair. So yeah, it's important to, the eye contact thing is easy. You can practice eye contact with anybody, and you can even practice it on a date. And just, again, this is another thing where it is valuable to have a friend that you can talk to honestly and openly and look for advice and criticism and say, hey, when we're talking and I look you in the eye, does it feel weird or creepy at all? Because that is a legitimate concern to have, that, okay, if I'm looking at somebody in the eye and we're talking, is it going to, because there's a certain amount of looking in the eye and then looking away, looking around, then going back to their eyes that is natural.
It's right. There's a timing element involved. Absolutely.
And there's a certain amount where if you don't look them in the eye enough or you look them in the eye too much, it can get weird and awkward.
And I've known people on both sides of that where it's just like they just would not look you in the eye, and they would
and other people that just won't look away.
And then he used to like look down all the time, and it was just, he was a very confident guy. And you'd look at him and you'd be like, is this dude like an actor, like a really good looking guy or whatever? And it just, he couldn't keep eye contact. And it was a little off-putting.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd say a lot off-putting.
That's something that you should have somebody in your life that you can ask about that and say, okay, this is something I want to get better at. Tell me, do I stare in your eyes too much, not enough? Do I look around too much, not enough? I mean, just get a feel. I'll ask you right now, Eddie, have you picked up any of that from me?
No.
You like my balance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But like, what about me? Okay, I was going to say, yeah, that is an awkward conversation to have.
Dan, you're terrible. I wanted to stage this whole conversation just to tell you the problem.
I do notice when I want to, and I don't know if it's something I should correct or whatever, when I'm trying to think of something, I do stare off a ball off to the left or to the right.
That's something about accessing the creative part of your brain where that's a natural thing.
Okay.
I think that's how, I've heard that's how police can spot liars too. When you're talking to them and you start looking up into the left or up into the right, I don't remember what the detail.
Oh, you're spinning the story.
Yeah, you're like accessing the imagination and getting ready to make something up based on how you're.
That makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, I've heard that's true. I don't know if it is, but it's definitely something I've heard. But yeah, I can't think of a time where I've ever been put off by the way you look or the way you engage your eyes. But
you see that now.
Yeah, that'll be super open to it.
Yeah.
Briefly touch her forearm when you ask her to dance, ask for her number, or ask her out on a date. But yeah, the forearm touch is about as good as it gets as far as very low risk breaking the physical touch barrier. Anything else other areas can be a little bit tougher.
You know what that reminded me of is when we would go out when we were doing some ballroom dancing.
Yeah.
We would go out to different clubs and stuff like that, and some of the ladies would come by and ask us to dance. Do you ever remember a time where a lady would actually like touch you on the arm and invite you to dance?
Yes, I do.
And what was your...
Didn't care for it.
That felt a little bit more pressure to dance with her, I bet. It's probably felt that's what I'm thinking. No? Like she's a little bit more aggressive with that.
Yes, but
yeah,
in most cases, I didn't want to be there anyway.
Correct.
I didn't want to dance, and so it was just, it made it I was a little more self-conscious to say no thank you if I got the touch.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind that the lady might feel as well.
Now, when I, again, back in corporate America, when I was sitting in a cubicle and I would have a manager or project manager come over and ask for a favor, if they put their hand on my shoulder and asked me for it, I was a lot more compliant. I didn't even attempt to think of a reason why I shouldn't do it, even if it wasn't part of my job. It was just like, oh, you need some help. That's immediately, I was just like, oh, you're coming to me, you're being vulnerable by touching me on my shoulder. I have no idea if that still exists in corporate America these days. This was like 20 years ago. So yeah, maybe HR immediately comes and handcuffs the manager at that point and they get fired and canceled. I don't know. But I absolutely agree with that last one.
Yeah. I would,
in terms of the effectiveness.
I would suspect that it still happens fairly normally because it's, I think a lot of people jump to this. You can't ask women on dates anymore.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm kidding.
Yeah, you can. You just have to be a little bit more. If you're creepy about stuff, you're more likely to get in trouble than you were.
You can't be as lazy and sloppy.
Exactly.
That bottom line, right? You actually need to be a little bit conscientious, and you need to ask someone and communicate in the proper way, where you're showing respect. You've put some time and thought into your request instead of just letting whatever comes out of your mouth and your feelings to wash over the entire situation, which is what I feel like a lot of times we've reverted it, not we, but people have reverted into and caused this kind of backlash of, hey, you need to consent for everything and whatever. We go from one extreme.
Right. It's mostly, and I think those issues come across, or those issues become a problem when you are overly focused on, I need to get what I need out of this interaction.
And not thinking about the other person.
And not bringing value to the other person.
Right.
If it's, you're a tool to help me meet my needs, and I'm going to treat you as such a tool, that...
Yeah, that's what you get.
That's what you get, yeah. You've got a good chance that somebody's going to be like, no, this isn't okay, and I've got a real problem with this.
Yeah.
Where when you're looking to bring value to other people in your interactions, then you can do that and worry a lot less about, oh no, am I going to get in trouble? And so, the people...
That to me, that's immediately victim mindset right there. That's immediately, oh, I can't do, I don't want to have to actually do the work to be conscientious, to present myself where I'm bringing that value. I would rather just complain about it and say, I can't do it.
Exactly. And when I think...
I'm in a no-win situation.
When I think about either guys talking about, you can't even ask a girl on a date anymore, or comedians, you can't joke about anything. My immediate thought is always, okay, you probably don't have all that much to offer. That is straight where I go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, this environment has made it impossible for me to do the thing I want to do. I'm always like, okay, well, you're not bringing much.
Figure it out.
Table. Exactly. Figure it out.
And it's not rocket science. There's lots of people doing it. It's not like you're trying to populate Mars here. Come on.
Yeah.
People do this stuff. People ask people out all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Come on. It's not like nobody's going on dates anymore.
And whenever I hear on the comedy side, the people talking about you can't say anything anymore. It's either super successful multimillionaires that are saying it, or it's really hacky, crappy comedians that are that good anyway.
There are so many more venues and opportunities for comedians these days with all the online and the streaming and it's ripe at this point.
If you're good, you can pretty much find a take on any subject that people will enjoy hearing you make jokes about if you're good.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is, if you're really good, you can even make jokes about not being able to joke about things that you're in the middle of joking about and getting $80 a ticket to joke about, and then you're complaining that you can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That
doesn't
true for me. Yeah. Okay, be creative when planning your first date. Think of something adventurous, playful, or exciting to do. Yeah, dinner and a movie is played out. I like to emphasize opportunities where you can talk to somebody and get to know them.
Absolutely.
Not sit in a black, dark room where you're just both facing the same direction.
I think that's just an outdated idea. That is an easy date type of thing where there weren't a lot of choices back in the day when we were growing up, when we were much younger.
Yeah.
Like, the movie was one of the few things you could go out and do, especially if you're like underage and things like. There wasn't a lot of. I think that just stuck around as almost just a lazy common expression for ideas for going out and stuff like that. that's something you do after you've been dating someone for years, and you're not there to get to know the person. You're there to get to know the movie. That's why you're there, because you're there for the movie, not the person.
That's very true.
Right?
Yeah. Think of things that you can do that are a little different and that can emphasize personal interaction and conversation and experiencing something new with the person and not just...
Yeah. Now, that being said, if you've been talking to somebody online and you guys both like talking about a specific movie that's coming out and you're excited and you go back and forth and you both have like a little bit of interest in the history or whatever, then maybe go to that movie together and then you've got something to talk about afterwards too, right? Don't just, all right, end of the night kind of thing. All right, yeah, we did the movie, now we're done.
Yeah.
The movie is a tool then to facilitate more of a connection afterwards, perhaps, right?
Yeah, certainly. Don't make the movie the centerpiece of the date. Be a gentleman, open doors, pull out her chair. I agree with all that. Be protective and confident. I agree with that too. And again, the bottom line on all of these is really, you've got to approach interactions that you want to be successful, that involve other people, have to be approached from a place of abundance, where you never treat any potential client, any potential employer, any potential partner, oh boy, this might be my last chance of getting this fill in the blank job, relationship, client, whatever. The stakes are so high. I've got to control every part and every aspect of this. Otherwise I could be poor. I could be alone. I could be out of business. I could be bankrupt. You got to approach every interaction with, hey, this is going to be an exciting new experience no matter how it ultimately works out. And I'm going to have a good time because I'm a person that enjoys new people and new things.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, then sorry, you got to do the inner work that it takes to get to that point, which takes a lot of time, often a lot of money, a lot of effort. But if you walk into interactions with people from a place of desperation, neither one of you are going to have fun.
Right. And it's not super complicated. It's more about, in each interaction, and I'm obviously working on this every day too, is what can you bring to the table? So It's like, it'd be different. It's similar to like you're invited to a dinner party and everybody's responsible for bringing a dish. Like,
yeah,
you show up without a dish and all you're doing is eating other people's food. What kind of impression are you going to be making? Like, similarly on a date or even a job interview, right? It's, hey, how can you be a benefit? How can you help this person? And it doesn't have to be over the top where you are basically a slave at their feet and allowing them to walk all over you either, right? It's just, what kind of value can I bring? And then be patient. And at some point, it's a little bit of a fine art and a fine line to walk on too. What you do want some reciprocity where they start asking you some things too, and you give them the time and space to, and you kind of just go back and forth, and be careful not to start counting and saying, okay, I did this and you did that, whatever. And I've been guilty of that in my past as well. But just the more you practice figuring out how you can feel as good as possible so that you're able to give that energy and those thoughts, whether that's from thoughts or physical actions or things that you're doing in advance, all those things require energy. Ultimately, it's all physical energy because even your brain uses glucose and everything else like that. So people get into, if you want to fix a lot of your relationships, fix your physical health or work on your physical health on a regular basis so that you aren't dragging and you can actually give energy. And I don't mean just taking caffeine pills and drinking lots of Red Bulls here either, because that's gonna peter out. I think that's a very important thing to think about. It's a lot easier than to think about other people, to give other things if you're feeling good about yourself, literally feeling good physically about yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Here are I think the list of things not to do, we can go pretty quickly down. Don't use cheesy pickup lines. The best way to introduce yourself to someone is hi, hello, how are you? Not something that you read in a book or on the internet. Don't make overt sexual innuendos. Yeah, bring in any kind of sexual jokes. That's a high risk, high reward thing where it's better off to wait until, and it's one of those things where the lady will give the green light or the red light based on how your interactions are going. And if she's the one that breaks the seal on making a joke with a sexual innuendo, then you get one as well. You don't get 100, but you get one as well. And there should be a little bit of a back and forth on that. Don't dominate the conversation, interrupt her, or only talk about yourself.
There you go.
Definitely. You should ask questions. Well, don't not ask questions that will help you get to know her and help her tell her story. So you want her to tell her story. And so you should ask questions that make that easy. And if you don't do that, then you're going to have a worse time than you would otherwise. Don't think that spending a lot of money on the date is going to either help get you laid or help her think better of you. And spending a lot of money on a date is not a recipe for any kind of success, especially a first date. I guess it can appeal to women that their main interest is how much is this guy going to spend on me, but good luck having a relationship, a healthy, happy relationship with a girl that prioritizes.
Listen, there are websites for that, right? So if you want to go and do that and that's the type of relationship you want to have, no judgment, go ahead and do that. But just make sure that what you want is also what you're communicating that you want.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
and you're doing the thing.
And you're avoiding those covert contracts.
You're doing the things that will support building that, that end result.
I've never been on a date with a woman where I felt like she was only on the date with me because she, was going to get a free meal out of it. The women that I have dated absolutely value their time more than free food, where they're not going to say, okay, I will go be miserable for 2 hours just in exchange for a decent dinner. And it's, and I've not done anything on purpose to filter those women out. It's just, I don't think they're interested. The kind of woman that is willing to say, I don't like this guy, I'm not attracted to this guy, but I'll sit in front of him and listen to him talk to me for 2 hours just in trade for a free meal. I have to assume women like that must be out there, but I've never interacted with them.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of guys are really scared that they're going to find a woman like that. And I just don't think there's that many of them. And it's very easy to not attract them.
I agree. I think if you're being conscientious about communicating with somebody before you just go and meet them on a date, which is when I was online dating, I would absolutely try to get them on the phone first, but have a couple of conversations, not just go right for a date. I think it'll be pretty obvious that what the woman is interested in. Maybe not. Maybe that's the move with some people where they pretend that they're interested and then they get on the date and they're a completely different person once they are starting to sit down at dinner. I haven't dealt with that either. I think it's a few and far between type of situation. I think people talk about it a lot because it is a little bit out there of an extreme situation. Yeah. Just like the news is always talking about, it doesn't happen very often. So when it does happen, and it is that, because it's so extreme, it's talked about and it's remembered because
it's interesting and it's exciting.
And all of the emotions are coming up, so it's easier to remember stuff when the emotions are coming up. I don't think that's something to really worry about.
Yeah, another don't is don't plan dates that are just really ordinary and cookie cutter and boring. So dates should feel like you're investing the planning in the date because she's special to you and she's important, or even she has the potential to be special and important. That's even enough. Just, the idea of you go to this one bar for happy hour every day after work. So you just tell her, just meet me here. And it's very clear that this is just part of your routine and you're not really changing up anything or doing anything different. I would be excited about that.
I've heard that's pretty common these days.
Is it really?
There's no dates. It's just meet me for a drink at this place or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's not even a formal date. And not even when I was years ago on doing online dating, a lot of girls were like surprised that I would go and want to meet them for a dinner, like for our first date. And it's just
that. What else? Generally, I'm opposed to dinner as a first date.
Yeah.
I feel like because for me, again, I don't want to invest that much time in somebody that I might not get along with. And spend money on the dinner.
Okay, so that being said,
the idea of I have a routine where I go to this bar or this coffee shop every day after work, so I'm going to be there anyway. Why don't you just drop in and we can have a date? That's what I'm saying no to.
Yeah, I'm not doing a first date unless I know I'm interested in them. After I've had a conversation with them on the phone, I can hear their voice. I can get a little bit of a better sense versus just the online texting or messengers.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. You and I have had a different approach to that where I'm willing to go meet somebody for a coffee or a cocktail. I mean, in my case, coffee. After very little, if I like what their profile said enough to swipe on them, I'm willing to meet for a cup of coffee or they want to have a drink. Yeah. Then that's a very low bar for me. But yeah, tasks. And I haven't liked to engage in a lot of chit chat before that first date. I don't want to pour in time and effort texting someone or even have a voice conversation where I don't have access to body language and nonverbal communication.
I get it.
It's like, let's fast forward to the part where we meet for a drink and then go for a walk.
Yeah.
And then we can decide if we like each other enough to sit staring at each other across a dinner table for an hour and a half.
So for me, it's easier to do some texting and a phone call in between my other tasks versus having to leave my house, drive somewhere, take time off of my schedule and everything else and meet them, right? So that to me, we just operate differently. So for me, that's more of an investment of time to have to go meet them in person for coffee. I can get enough information as to if I am going to go, I want to make sure I'm as interested as possible based on the little bit of time and effort that I'm putting in at home with the texting and the calls. Now I'm willing to take some time off. And usually dinner is the evening. It's after all my other obligations during the day. Coffee can be tough at night. I'm sensitive to caffeine, so it keeps me up. So anyway, both ways are valid, I think.
And the other thing that I have noticed when I was dating, where I would push for hey, let's meet for coffee, let's meet for a drink, instead of a bunch of rapport building online, is there was a greater chance that day of she would cancel and not go through with the date.
Okay.
And every time that happened, I was like, okay, good.
Yeah, now you know.
Now I know. So if she showed up and we had a great date, that was fun. If she canceled, I never saw her again, that was fun too. Because both of those are positive results as far as I see it.
At least she's canceling and it's not a no-show, because that would...
Yeah, and that has come on occasion as well, but that's fine too, because I'm going to a place for a coffee that I enjoy via.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, good point. It's not like you're not getting any of
there. I'll enjoy my Americano, then I'll read the book, I'll play on my phone, and I'll go home, and okay, this is one more person in the large pool that I never have to consider as a potential match. That still is a positive interaction that taught me something. The final thing, do not stare at her breasts while she is talking or scan the room checking out other girls while you're with her.
I can't believe you needed to put that in there, but okay.
Me too. Yeah, the easiest way to show someone I don't go on many dates and I don't know how to act on them is gawking at her body or looking at other girls. And so, yeah, it feels like, look, there's something to be said for the reason that you're buying The Man's Guide to Women is because you do feel a little overwhelmed, don't know what you should do. So I guess it's okay.
Okay, good point.
Put it in there.
Yeah.
Because the guys, and this is a problem that you run into with guys of all stripes and in all areas, guys who have had limited success in an area feel like, okay, I know all there is to know. There's nothing new to be taught. As the people that are reading this book may be people that feel like they're clueless or have had a really big relationship failure that they're looking to recover from. So I'm okay with them putting something like that in there.
Okay.
But yeah, it does feel self-evident that, if you're a guy who stares at a girl's body while you're on your first date, you're sending the message of, I'm a guy that doesn't have a lot of experience with girls' bodies or with girls who want me to experience their body. And so I'm just going to gawk at you and stare at you and show you that I don't know how to act.
And I think it also goes and shows another warning signal to people where it shows that you may not have control over yourself.
Right.
And if you don't have control over yourself in a situation that might be obvious to a lot of people, what's going to happen when you are tested in ways when it comes to drugs, alcohol, overeating,
getting in a fight with some other guy,
overreacting, just not exhibiting awareness and control over yourself.
Awareness is a big thing too. I understand what the social norms for this kind of situation are, how I'm expected to act, how I'm expected to behave. And yeah, checking out other girls or staring at your date's chest is not something that fits within those social norms. And it has so much it's okay, how likely is this guy to have a career where he's able to provide for himself and others? How likely is it that he's going to be able to give me his attention over a long period of time and not be distracted by other women? There's a lot that kind of action communicates, and none of it's good.
Yeah, you're showing risky behavior. Exactly. So that's and that's now you're asking more of her instead of giving value. You are asking her to give you value based on you providing very little value up until this point, because she's just getting to know you too.
Correct. Exactly. All right. So this was a good chapter. The next one that we're going to get into is part 3, romancing a woman. Making your move in the signs of seduction is chapter 5. So that'll be what we cover next. Thank you as always, Dan. This is one of my favorite books that I've read since you and I have started doing this. So I'm glad that we got around to finally get the target of one of our series.
A lot of great info in this.
Absolutely. And we will pick it up next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the complete and whole episode. Dan and I really appreciate it. We know you have lots of choices when it comes to guys with microphones who have what they believe to be important things to say, and we are thrilled that you chose to listen to us. Please check out our website, mindfullymasculine.com, again, for audio episodes, video episodes, and any news that we want to share. Thanks.